You were the first non-white reporter on The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Are you feeling the pressure of having to represent 2 billion Muslims on a comedy late-night show?
Suddenly, after 9/11, I realized, there's an opportunity here for me to actually say something.
There were studies done after the Iraq War that Americans who watched The Daily Show were more informed about WMDs than Americans who watched nightly news.
He was also fascinated with the American concept of brunch. And he said, in America, between breakfast and lunch, they have another meal.
Paramount is now owned by David Ellison,
Sure.
who is a pro-Israel billionaire. There's been reporting that he has a blacklist that he's putting people on.
But we see the dehumanization that is happening in Gaza. I can't stay silent. Jon Stewart used to talk about, can you sleep at night? Trump behaved like an old gay queen in that video. He was so in love with Zoran.
If you were to meet Donald Trump, what would you say?
I'm Mehdi Hassan.
And I'm Asif Mandvi.
And we're not kidding. Thank you. Live, well, it's not live, but live taping in front of a live audience at the Sundance Festival here at the Impact Muslim House. We are delighted to be here. Asif, it's such a pleasure to be sitting with you here in, where are we? Park City. Utah.
Yeah.
Not a state I've ever been to before.
It's the last place I ever expected to be sitting with you.
Well, the last time I saw you, you can throw off cushions. The last time I saw you in person was actually at a very brown event. Do you remember what it was?
It was Eid
It
dinner.
wasn't
No,
the
it
mosque.
was
No, it wasn't Eid dinner.
No,
it was
a
the Zoran
Zoran's,
Mamdani election night win in Brooklyn.
Yes.
I was leaving.
And
that is the last time I saw you there.
Yeah.
People thought I was drunk that night.
well, people think you're drunk often. So
High energy.
or on Adderall. We don't know.
That's Donald Trump.
Yeah, it was great to see you that night, and what an amazing
night
that was. It was,
and I want to talk to you about
remarkable.
that tonight. But before we get there, before we get to Mamdani,
Yes.
and Mamdani, of course, is like us, a naturalized American, an immigrant from Uganda of Indian origin. I look at you and your background, and I think we have a lot in common, right? We're both of Indian descent.
We are
I moved here to the US as an immigrant. So did you. We both moved from the UK.
from the UK.
So we're British, Indian, Muslim immigrants.
That's right.
Now trying to make it in this crazy country.
Yeah, my family. I grew up in the north of England, in a city called Bradford.
Explain to an American audience, what is Bradford?
Bradford is
Good
is the curry capital of the UK.
Yes.
Really.
It is Desi Central.
It's Desi Central. It's often called Bradistan. That was the derogatory term for it. But I grew up there in the 70s, and it was rife with is that a word? I don't know. With the National Front.
Yeah,
and,
far-right
the
racists.
far-right racists. So it was a lot like living in America today.
I read. Well, on that note, I read somewhere that your dad moved you guys to the US in the 80s when you were 16 because he was fed up of Margaret Thatcher.
He was.
And my question is, had he never heard of Ronald Reagan?
Right.
Why did he think moving to the US would free him from a kind of right-wing
I don't know.
culture?
I don't know.
I know they didn't have Google back in the 80s.
I think the U.S. He was also fascinated, and this is true. He was also fascinated with the American concept of brunch.
Okay.
And he
liked it or disliked it?
He loved it.
Okay.
He visited America, and somebody took him to brunch, and he called my mother and I, and he said, in America, they have between breakfast and lunch, they have another meal. It is called brunch.
Get your green card.
They have
Stop
so
moving.
much food here that
true.
you can eat again. And so he literally brought us.
I love that. People come for jobs, for values. Your dad came for brunch.
He came for brunch because he wanted that extra meal and that $4.95 pancake special at IHOP.
IHOP.
So he was. So yes, it was to leave Margaret Thatcher and to come and have pancakes in America.
Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to Zeteo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism.
Just on the serious note, you mentioned the racism in the 70s, 80s, and you mentioned racism now. The question I often get asked as a British immigrant here, as a Muslim, as a brown person is, where is it worse? There or here? How do you navigate that question?
I actually I wrote a book a few years ago, and I had this. I wrote this thing in there, which I thought summed it up. When I was living in England, the feeling was that no matter how long I lived there and how long my family was there, I would never be British. I would never really be British. And when I came to America, I got the sense that like Americans sort of felt like, well, it doesn't really matter. This was in the 80s, remember? So, but it was like, it doesn't really matter where you're from. You're American now. And the fact that you come from a culture that is old and a religion, like they didn't know what Muslims, because Americans only learn about history based on like what countries Americans bomb. So that's how we learn.
Haven't bombed India.
Right. We haven't. So they learned about geography that way. Right. And so, so a lot of Americans thought Muslim was a type of cloth when I first got here. Think about that for a second. So they didn't know what I was. Like they have.
And you were in
no
Florida,
idea.
right? As a
And I was in
teenager.
Florida. So it was almost like my ethnicity, and it didn't really matter, and it didn't even. I was just American. I was, and until of course.
There is that advantage, and I just did an interview recently with Krishan Gurumurthy, very famous British Indian news host in the UK. Went on his podcast, and he asked me that question, and I did make the same point.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound rah, rah, rah American,
No.
but there is a sense for immigrants here, even with the histories of slavery and Jim Crow and anti-black racism, for immigrants, maybe pre the Stephen Miller, Donald Trump era,
Sure.
there was still a sense of anyone can come here and
Anyone
become an
can
American.
come here and
Even
become-
Ronald Reagan gave
Right.
that famous speech at the Statue of Liberty praising immigration in a way that Donald Trump
Well,
never could.
that is why, in a weird way, that's the sort of dream that my family came with, was that like anybody can come here and become an American, make it, and I think it's the heartbreak that I feel today, looking at my country and seeing what is happening and the disillusionment of that dream that my parents came here with.
And you're a double immigrant in the sense that you were born in India, moved to the UK as a baby, and then come to America as a kid.
I
So
think
you have
of
two
my-
places to go back to.
Right. Although
Because I get all this racism now from
right.
MAGA people online, and they're like, we're going to deport you back to the UK. And I'm like,
Right,
whoa,
right,
back
right,
to the UK.
right.
Whoa. Like the racism's gone up a notch.
Yeah.
Right? When I was a kid, it was
I'm
like,
not-
go back to India. Now it's like, go
Right.
back to London. I'm
Go
like,
back, yeah.
okay.
I'm not.
If you say so.
At this point, the choice between the UK or Modi's India. I'm not sure as a Muslim.
I know the UK. Well,
you know.
Nigel Farage is heading in the UK
Yeah.
to be the next prime minister.
But I
That's
think of
great.
myself as a turducken.
As a what?
Do you know what a turducken is?
A two what?
A turducken.
I don't even know what language you're speaking right now.
So let me explain to you what a turducken is. A turducken is something that only an American would eat, which is that it is a turkey with stuffed with a chicken, stuffed with a duck. Only an American would eat such a thing because right. So I think of myself as a human turducken, which is that I'm an Indian baby stuffed inside an English schoolboy, stuffed inside an American adult. So
Wow.
that's how I describe
You're a
myself.
real American.
Thank you.
You're a real American. You're as American as Melania. Are you worried about being denaturalized? Because that's the new insult of choice.
Yeah.
Right? Before it was go back to where you came from, then it was like, you dirty Muslim. Now it's just denaturalized. Every time I say
Yeah.
anything, I have members of Congress saying deport and denaturalize Mayism.
Yeah.
Those are the new kind of buzzwords in the racist playground.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it is always a threat that they hold over our heads. You know, my wife, thank God, is a constitutional lawyer or studied constitutional law, and so she's always like, you know, there's many steps that have to be taken in order for that.
But they're trying to shorten those steps.
Yeah, right,
They're
they're trying
literally
to
putting
shorten
bills
them.
in. All right, let's talk about your journey here, because it's been fascinating and you represent so much. We're here at Sundance. We're talking about Muslim representation.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that when people draw up a list on just two hands of who the Muslim representation was in the last 20 years, you're high up on that list. Just pop quiz. You've been in a lot of things.
Thank
You've been
you.
in Evil.
Yeah.
You've been on Broadway. But I'm just going to take a risk and ask the crowd. If I ask you for one show you associate Asif Manvi with, what would that show be? I think it's The Daily Show.
Yeah, The Daily Show. I think so. I mean,
You were the first non-white reporter on The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Before you, there was not a black or a brown reporter.
There was no-
2006, I believe.
2006, there was no non-Caucasian correspondent on The Daily Show at that point, and it was such an anomaly that the night I appeared on The Daily Show, the Los Angeles Times wrote an entire article about like, who is this brown person on The Daily Show? Unbelievable.
And
They
you
have-
weren't a comedian. Like
I
you
wasn't
weren't
a-
a stand-up comedian. You were an actor on Broadway.
Yeah, I was an actor.
You weren't like Hassan Minhaj came as a comedian trying to get a role.
Yeah. No, I actually was a legit theater and TV actor who.
What was
went
the
to-
audition like then?
So I went down. They called me and they said, "Come down to there was an audition for the Daily Show." And at this point, I had been doing a lot of, the voice of Saddam Hussein on some David Letterman sort of voice sketch or whatever. So I thought, oh, this is going to be some bullshit thing. I'm not gonna go do that. So I said no to the audition, and then they
No
called,
to the audition with Jon Stewart.
yeah, well, I didn't know it was with Jon Stewart. I just knew that there was an audition, and then they called back and they said, no, it's for a correspondent, like a Middle East correspondent. And I said, okay, listen, I'm not really up for it today, but can I go tomorrow? They said, well, if you don't go today by 3:00, it'll be done. So I said, all right, fine. I lived on the Upper West Side. The Daily Show was about 20 blocks south of where I lived. So I just put on a suit and tie, went down to the Daily Show, and there's Jon Stewart, greets me, and he invites me in. And I didn't know what I was doing. I literally did just my best Stephen Colbert impression. And I remember John said to me before we read together, he said, I was such an arrogant prick. I can't believe I said this, but he said, have you ever been in front of a studio audience before? And I looked at him with such contempt, and I said, I've been on Broadway, John.
Jon Stewart's like, okay.
And he was like, okay, Mr. Broadway. All right, here we go. And then I read the teleprompter. I did the thing.
I think they put you on that night.
They
And
said
this is
you're
in the middle
hired,
of.
you're
I
on.
think we may have a clip of that night
that.
or your first. Let's have a
Yeah.
clip and see Asif on the Daily Show in 2006.
Asif, thank you for joining us. Do the people of the Middle East share this administration's clearly more optimistic view of the conflict?
Oh, absolutely, John. It's not often that an entire region is given this kind of chance. Every day, the cafes and outdoor markets of the Middle East explode in anticipation. As one gentleman told me while standing in the smoldering remains of what was once his village, you can't get hummus without mashing some chickpeas.
Wow.
And
Man, I'm such a baby.
apart from the fact that you are super old now, you could play that clip today on the Daily Show. I mean, nothing
Yeah.
has changed,
No,
right? There's the same
it's the
conversations.
same-
It's a
it's-
Republican administration trying to bomb a Middle East country.
Yeah. Yes, it is cyclical.
And the
It's
Daily
been-
Show's still covering it.
Yeah, yeah.
You were the senior Middle East correspondent and senior Muslim correspondent, even though you're not from the Middle East, and you yourself say you're not a practicing Muslim. But you wore that cap.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Daily Show, we were satirizing what you do for real,
Yeah.
right? So,
Which is
there
easy.
there wasn't actually a time when I was unavailable. I think I was sick that week, and John Oliver was the senior Middle East correspondent. So, we would just tag on the tag, but it was.
But you must have felt some serious note.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You must have felt some pressure. Now you're on the Daily Show. People are recognizing you in the street. You're the Muslim guy from the Daily Show. We've all been there. Those of us who are in public life and are brown or Muslim.
Yeah.
Are you feeling the pressure of having to represent 2 billion Muslims on a comedy late night show?
I tried not to think about it that much, but it was something that would, I lived on the Upper West Side in New York at the time, and I remember.
You've said that a couple of times now.
I know, it was because back then I could afford it. But what was really gratifying and satisfying, because you're in this bubble, you're sort of in this, the Daily Show is a very small sort of incubator of comedy talent, and you're not always aware of what's going on in the outside world or how it, so in terms of how people are responding to it. But sometimes I would walk down the street, and one of the most gratifying things was when I would see people of color, brown people, South Asians, Middle Eastern, come up to me and say, hey, thank you for being on there, because there was nobody standing on that fence and doing satire from the perspective of being an insider and an outsider
Yes.
at the same time. And I was just put into that role. I didn't ask for it. It happened. And then I realized, this is an opportunity for me to really talk about something that I didn't even know I wanted to talk about, because my Muslimness was not something I walked around being like, I'm an American Muslim,
Yes.
and suddenly after 9/11, that became very front and center. And after the Daily Show, I realized, there's an opportunity here for me to actually say something. And I'm really thankful to Jon Stewart for he gave me that opportunity and cultivated that.
It's so interesting because so many people I find who ended up being thrust into public life
Yeah.
as a Muslim, quote unquote, as a Muslim,
Yeah.
didn't choose it. right?
No.
They didn't choose. I mean, I
No.
didn't go into the media. I became a journalist in 2000,
Right.
the year before 9/11. I left university in 2000. I didn't see myself as the Muslim guy. It was
No.
thrust upon me.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't even a public figure till 2009.
Right.
And then I was the guy who everyone called up every time there was a terrorist attack. The BBC would call me and say, "Do you want to be on a panel?"
Right.
To be the Muslim voice.
Right.
And that's not. I'm interested in many other things other than just Muslim Middle East issues. But
right.
that's what you become identified with. And you obviously had the satirical title of senior Middle East
Yeah.
correspondent.
No, I was-
being
I-
a British
I-
Indian American turducken.
Yeah, right. I mean, I didn't come from satire in that way or anything. It was all I sort of. I think of the Daily Show as like my graduate school because in my graduate comedy school because it was where I got to work with some of the funniest people in the business and just learn so much about comedy and so when I got there. And suddenly I realized, like, oh, there's a voice that I can have, and it's not a voice I chose to have. I just wanted to work as an actor and get employed. And suddenly I had this platform, and I had, like
a
actors
huge
don't have
platform.
an office. Like it's not a thing that we have. We get a trailer sometimes, but we
Yeah,
don't. And at the Daily Show, I had an office, and they were like, you can write things, and you can put. And it suddenly was like, oh wow, I'm really.
And you had impact. I mean, there were
Yeah.
studies done after the Iraq War that Americans who watched The Daily Show were more informed about WMDs
Yeah.
than Americans who watched nightly news.
Yeah.
Especially Fox.
Yeah, well,
so
yeah,
you guys, fake news, but you were actually doing more education and information.
Right. Well, I think
Which is
at the heart
tragic.
of it, I have always considered myself a storyteller, whether I'm doing comedy or Daily Show or theater or television, and that is we're here at Sundance, right? Where there's surrounded by filmmakers and a lot of Muslim filmmakers here today, and I feel like that is how we create, how we impact. I mean, look, I'm wearing a hat that says facts, and facts go so far.
Yes.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, the
about how
way
you
we
feel.
make real cultural impact, the way we make real change is through hearts and minds and through telling humanizing stories of people. We see the dehumanization that is happening
Yes.
in Gaza and other places in the world right now. And I think it is through storytelling and through the art of that we actually can combat that rise of dehumanization and that attempt to do that.
You mentioned Gaza, and I just mentioned earlier when we played that clip.
Yeah.
20 years ago, that clip
Sure.
came out. It's still relevant today. Everything you said on that clip could be said on Daily Show tonight.
Right.
We are in the middle of an ongoing genocide with a rather fake ceasefire. We are still seeing Lebanon being bombed. You were talking about Lebanon 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And, by the time this show goes out, we may have bombed Iran again. Donald Trump
Right.
says he's sending a vast armada to the Middle East to take on the Iranians. You, as a non-Daily Show person, as a non-actor, as just an American citizen, have been one of those people who've spoken out on Gaza. A few months ago, you hosted the Voices for Gaza event in New York with people like Mossab Abu Toha and Mahmoud Khalil. When you do stuff like that, do you worry about the consequences for your career?
I mean, that is always a thing that has existed in the back of my mind whenever I've posted anything or put out stuff. My wife and I would have conversations about what kind of things can I post, what kind of things should we say, how should we word things, because it is a concern. But I honestly think that the tragedy of it is that over time, what has been going on in Gaza has become so horrendous that it's hard for people to now. There was a time when
Yes.
you couldn't use the word genocide, and now it's almost like there's no other description. I mean, now I feel like there is a kind of an acceptance of that as a reality now, where maybe
in
back-
mainstream society.
in mainstream society,
But amongst media political elites in the worlds we move in, there's
Right.
still a lot of resistance to it.
There's-
I mean, you did a show called Evil, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big show on Paramount, CBS. CBS Paramount is now owned by David Ellison,
Sure.
who is a pro-Israel billionaire. There's been reporting that he has a blacklist that he's putting people on. I interviewed Javier Bardem recently. He's rumored to be on that blacklist. He
Right.
said it's a badge of honor for him.
Right.
That is something you have to take seriously, right? As an
Yeah.
actor, as a comedian, am I going to be able to work at that network again if I go do this event for Palestine?
I mean, look, like I said, it is always a concern, but the reality is that I can't stay silent about it. I can't not talk about it, and maybe there is a consequence to it, but I think the greater consequence for me and my soul. And Jon Stewart used to talk about, like, can you sleep at night?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I allowed them to silence me or anybody. And so I feel like, for me personally, I think about it, but I can't think about it that much, because what I think about more is what's happening to children in Gaza, and what I'm dealing with is nothing compared to the daily lives of people in Gaza and other places as well. But I think it's not something that I can spend too much time thinking about.
You mentioned sleeping at night. Putting aside what's happening abroad, there's enough stuff at home to keep us awake at night.
Sure.
I woke up yesterday and headed to the airport to get to Salt Lake City to attend this festival, and I had colleagues on a chat saying, "Well, should we cover the shooting?" What the shooting? What's the latest shooting?
Right.
And that was the shooting of an American citizen, a nurse, a white guy. The second killing in Minneapolis by ICE or CBP since the start of the year. Again, to go back to what we were discussing, these are American citizens born and brought up in the U.S. You and I, American citizens, brown from outside. How worried are you about what ICE is doing in the future of the United States democracy with this rogue paramilitary masked force running around shooting people?
I mean, it is horrendous. We're seeing it. How worried am I? I'm extremely worried about it, and I have a small child, and I'm getting him his UK passport because not that the UK is much better at this point, but it is still better than what's happening here, and so there is.
Do you, like a lot of brown people? I'm guessing people in this room have a plan B.
I mean, my plan B is to get really much more famous. So,
that didn't help Rosie O'Donnell.
I'm not gonna go live in a farm somewhere in France or something. But maybe there is I move back to the UK or something like that. But I don't want to do that because I do actually love this country and I do love being here. And I think that. Look, the population, I think, is starting to rise up and speak out against ICE and against what is happening and the horrendous stuff about what's happening in Minneapolis. And I will say this, and this may sound controversial, but when Renee Good was shot, right, the entire country, we saw what happened. But there was also, on New Year's Eve, there was an African-American man who was shot and killed by ICE in his home. Right. And the only reason I know about that guy is because a white woman was shot a few days later. Now, I'm not saying that the one is better or worse, but they're horrible. But in this country, you sometimes feel like there are lives that we talk about and that we care about and that we say that's important and we need to speak about that. And then there are other lives that we don't talk about and we don't. I mean, you see it in Gaza, you see it everywhere. I made a joke once, but at that Gaza event that I did, which is that we were talking about freedom of speech, and after when Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air, everyone was talking about how our freedom of speech and our First Amendment. But the reality is our freedom of speech was being attacked for a long time before Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air. And I said maybe Mahmoud Khalil needed his own late night talk show, and we would have actually responded in a completely different way. So when those kids were being silenced on Columbia University and people were being detained and taken away for writing op-eds or whatever, it does sometimes feel like it's tragic what happened the other day to Mr. Peretti. But I'm glad that there are people, when I say this as a comedian in some ways, that white people are standing up and saying this is enough. Because when brown and black people do it, we get killed, right? And when white people get killed in those situations, America takes notice. And I think that's, some people may not like me saying that.
Black and brown
but
lives are expendable, let's just be blunt.
it is true.
Whereas you're like, oh my God, they also killed a white mother in her car after she dropped her kid to school.
Yes, and
that's crazy.
That's crazy.
No, 100%.
So,
I mean, I hope that you're right, that people are rising up. We have midterm elections this year. I was interviewing Congressman Ro Khanna recently at our DC Live event. He says that they are going to use ICE to basically intimidate people at voting stations. This is way beyond immigration or deportations. But, sometimes we get a bit depressed about how bad things are. But there is hope. There are shards of light. And I think to go back, you don't think so?
I don't.
Well, let's go back to where we met most recently. At the Zohran Mamdani, election win. That was an insane event. he should not have won that election.
No.
He did.
No.
He came from 1% in the polls.
But you know what?
Muslim Mamdani.
Right.
He's now putting bidets in Gracie Mansion.
Right. And I got a chance to go to Gracie Mansion once, and honestly, the toilets there are horrendous.
Did they at least have a lota?
They
A
will
watering
now.
can.
They will
No,
now.
now they're going to have the hand bidets, the good stuff.
Right, but you know what? You talk about Zoran, and my wife and I were very involved in Zoran's campaign, even when he was running for assembly. And the thing is that, as incredible as Zoran's rise is, you actually, in a weird way, cannot separate it from what is happening
Yes,
in the world. You can't
100%.
separate it from what's happening
Every
in Gaza.
every action has a reaction.
Right, you can't separate it from the fact that our country is funding a genocide. And so that actually, in a weird way, led to the fact that there was a groundswell of support among young people, among Muslims, among people of color, among African Americans, young African Americans, and they came out and supported this because they saw that. And when I met Zoran, it was the first time I saw a politician actually walk the walk. You know, he asked me to come down and do a hunger strike outside the White House, and I said, no, I'm on TV, I don't do that. And so no,
My father came here for brunch.
Yeah. He came here for brunch. I can't do a hunger strike. He would be so disappointed. But when he was standing outside the White House after October 7th and doing a hunger strike, I thought to myself, oh, this is not your regular politician. Nobody, I can't see Chuck Schumer doing anything like this.
The first time you were impressed with him from the moment you met him.
The moment I met him.
Were you more impressed than this guy was the moment he met him? Let's play a clip.
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought. I think I want him to do a great job, and we'll help him do a great job.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes. Okay. It's easier.
I mean,
It's
that is the most
brilliant.
That is one of them. I've watched that clip maybe
Oh my
700
God.
times. Donald Trump loves Zoran Mamdani.
That
They
clip,
text each other now, apparently.
No,
You heard this?
it's great. That clip arouses me. Like, it's so. It is literally one of the. And you know, Zoran, having known him now for a long time, for a while, Zoran has like resting smile face.
Yes,
you know.
I have resting angry Muslim
You
face.
have resting angry.
He has
Muslim
resting
face.
smile face.
Yeah. I have resting dumb face, but he has resting smile face, and you can see.
He's trying not to smile.
He doesn't smile at all.
And
but
Trump never smiles normally.
normally.
But he smiles in this, and Zoran normally smiles all the time and doesn't smile.
And he doesn't, but he stays. What was brilliant about it was he just stayed on topic. He did not sway. He didn't try to impress Trump.
No. But he somehow did.
He did.
I mean, I interviewed him recently and I asked him, what the F did you say?
Yeah.
Like, apparently when he walked to the room, Trump said, you're better looking in real life than I thought you were.
Oh, see?
That's what Trump said to
He
him.
is. Trump behaved like an old gay queen in that picture, in that video. He was so in love with Zoran. He was like, how do I get in this guy's pants?
By the way,
Like-
to be fair, that was the third Muslim guy that week he had fallen in love with at the White
Right,
House.
well,
He had
MBS.
MBS,
He had
and
MBS.
President Sharaf,
Yeah,
former
he said-
Julani of Syria.
Right.
They'd all come to the Oval Office. So my theory is the way we defeat Islamophobia in America is we send every Muslim man to the White House
Right.
just 1 week after the next.
But very handsome Muslim man.
Very handsome. You and me.
Yeah, of course. No, but it was a remarkable thing to watch and to just see how he played that moment so brilliantly and
That is how you
strategically.
keep hope alive.
Yeah, I think
No matter whatever happens to Zoran Mamdani's political career, he has bragging rights for the rest of his life that he went into the White House, called Donald Trump a fascist to his face,
I
and
know.
said the G word,
Yeah.
genocide, while the president nodded.
Right.
I mean, you'll never take that away. It was a
Yeah.
historic moment. On that note, let's go to our live audience here at Park City at the Sundance Film Festival here at the Muslim House. If you've got questions, not speeches, questions, wait, and we will have a microphone come to you.
Hi, my name is Noman. Just a question for Mehdi for you. If you were to meet Donald Trump, what would you say?
I've often thought about this. Not for you. Well, for you as well.
I mean, obviously, as a journalist, the first thing I'm going to say is, shall we do an interview? I mean, the funny thing is he answers his phone. You know, people now ring him on his cell phone. The New York Times, if you get his number, he answers his phone and just chats to you. My thing is, I would obviously ask for an interview because that's what I do. The problem is, people say, what would you do if you interviewed Donald Trump? It would be the shortest interview I've ever done. because he would just get up and walk out like 30 seconds in. The man is a snowflake of epic proportions. He can't handle.
Right.
Caitlin Conley, you're a nasty woman. You ask nasty questions. Like he's very thin-skinned.
Yeah.
So I don't think I actually could sustain an interview with
Well,
him.
I think that like I often sort of fantasize about doing a Daily Show style interview with
Yes.
Trump. What we used to do, we used to lull people into a
Yes,
false sense of
I love those
security,
interviews.
and then
you were very good at them. You know who was really good at them? Rob Riggle.
he was great. Yeah,
was good at those.
Yeah, and so I think you could maybe. Because sometimes I'll watch CNN or something and I'll scream at the TV.
Why
because
has the Daily Show never sent a reporter to a briefing or president to do that?
I think that they just know now what it is, and so I think they
I think in the Trump first time, I think I offered money on social media. A bunch of us did. So like, for the first reporter who will stand up and ask Donald Trump, when will you visit Wakanda?
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
someone to ask
Oh
that
my God.
question. Just
That's
ask that
brilliant.
question.
That's
When
brilliant.
will you sign the Sokovia Accords?
Right.
They love you in Wakanda. They built a Trump Tower. You know that Trump would go with it.
Right.
We know it. But that reporter would be fired. But it'd be worth it. We would crowdfund for
I
him.
would. There's people here in Hollywood, and I would love to get like a fake nose and a thing and a turban and put on an English accent and go in there and just pretend like I'm some reporter from Mumbai.
Have you seen what he does when there are foreign reporters? He said, "I don't understand what you're saying."
Right.
He does it. He's blatantly. He's classic. Like,
Right.
I don't understand what you're
But
saying.
you got to flatter him.
accent.
He understands flattery.
He does.
So as long as you're flattering him, the accent will work.
I would not flatter him. Is the answer to your question. So I wouldn't get a question. Let's go to the lady here in the front row.
Hi, thank you for being here and speaking truth to power. I wanted to ask, my name is Tamika. I wanted to ask you, when I started speaking out about Palestine and the various genocides, a friend told me that I would have to, at one point, choose between being an artist and an activist. And, I'm trying to keep hope alive. It's very hard. But what would you say to that? And give me some tips, really.
I mean, I don't think you have to choose because I think they are so interconnected, and especially in today's world. And I don't think people of color now, I'll speak for myself. I don't feel like I have the privilege of just being an artist anymore. Like I have to now, as a person of color, as a person who is, as a Muslim, as somebody who's seeing what's going on in the
Someone
world.
has a platform.
And has a platform, I have
that.
to now sort of integrate being an artist and being an activist. I don't have the luxury of just sort of, watching, I'm not being, but just watching football and kind of, just like
Also, don't
eating
you-
Doritos.
I feel like activism in that context is used as a pejorative, is used
Yeah.
as a way of saying, well, you've either got to do this or that. And that's not what we're doing. If you speak about a genocide, that's not activism. That's just speaking the truth about what's happening. It's like saying, what's your position on the Nazi Holocaust? And you say, well, I don't want to take a position. That would be an activist position. We'd say you're a Holocaust denier. No, everyone affirms that there was a Holocaust. It's just, and I get this as a journalist. People say to me, oh, are you a journalist or an activist? Which is complete BS. We don't say that to journalists who are speaking out against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We don't say that to journalists who are speaking out about women's rights in Iran. But apparently for Gaza, suddenly anyone who speaks out there is just an activist, is biased. There's also a complete rewriting of history. Artists in this country have always been political, have always played a role in every struggle. Miss Rachel, good friend of mine who's been on the show, when she gets attacked, I saw Meghan McCain, useless woman, my father, my father, my father. She said recently, when I was growing up, I didn't know what Mr. Rogers' politics were, which is complete bullshit, right? Mr. Rogers did an entire episode with a local black cop in the community to go up against segregation, right? So these people are rewriting history. What the hell was McCarthyism? What the hell were Hollywood blacklists? This was about targeting people in public life, in celebrities, actors who were taking political positions. And what annoys me about some parts of the Hollywood industry is that since October the 7th, they've been very silent about Gaza. Yes, we have the Mark Ruffalos and we have others who have spoken out, Javier Bardem and others, but they're a minority, right? The vast majority, the Tom Cruises, Brad Pitts, others, haven't really spoken out. I know Brad Pitt's done executive producing on a great film, but the actual speaking out, these people have lots to say about Donald Trump. They're happy to speak about politics. They're happy to speak about Sudan and Darfur. George Clooney spoke a lot about Darfur. And when it comes to Gaza, suddenly the cat has got their tongue. And it's the classic PEP position, progressive except Palestine. They'll take a progressive position on every issue, but this one becomes activism, controversial, too hard. And I think we, those of us who do speak out, have to keep naming and shaming them, unfortunately. Let's go back to the audience. We've got time for two more. Gentleman there in the corner, and then gentleman here who's been waiting.
I'll make it very short, Mehdi, for you. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, American Muslim, obviously Zoran Mamdani just winning the mayoral election. In the coming year, how do you think state power and municipal power will fare against federal power and everything that we're seeing? And how much influence and resistance can these office holders actually have against what we're seeing right now in the streets?
It's a great question. The question was about municipal power, state power, having Muslims elected at local levels. Zoran Mamdani, mayor of New York, Keith Ellison, elected statewide as Attorney General in Minnesota. I think it's a great question. I think that's where a lot of the debate and discussion will go. We've already seen Democratic governors playing a much better role at defending our rights than Democratic senators. You know, Pritzker and Newsom and others have done much more than your Schumers and your Hakeem Jeffries, sadly. So I do think state officials have a little bit of freedom to do that. We joked earlier about, Zoran Mamdani's texting with Trump. Now, whether that will help New York, we will see. The beauty of him is he's been able to do that without sacrificing his values or being overly sycophantic. Whether the other governors, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan has been to the White House, Wes Moore heaped praise, governor of Maryland, on Trump. Whether this will turn into tangible results for the people, we don't know. But really, local communities is our last line of defense. That's what we're seeing in Minneapolis. Yeah. We're seeing local people coming out. We're seeing local politicians. I mean, I would like to see members of Congress get on a plane from D.C. and go to Minneapolis and put their bodies in between migrants and American citizens and this goon squad. But even if they don't, there are enough local lawmakers doing that and taking a stand. And, what we're seeing right now is the greatest act of hypocrisy in American history. We are seeing a Republican Party that used to claim to be about free speech, cracking down on free speech in a way we've not seen in our lifetimes. We have a Republican Party that was obsessed with the Second Amendment. Kids get killed in a school. Oh, well, that's the price of the Second Amendment. Now they're like, why did he bring a gun to a protest? A legally acquired, concealed gun, which this nurse was carrying, Mr. Preti, killed. There are hypocrites on that too. And to go back to your question, they're hypocrites on states' rights. This was the party of states' rights. Don't tread on me. No big government. Stand up against tyranny. Now they're like, the president gets to do whatever he wants and everyone must obey him. And I think that's where the debate is going to go now as the year goes by. Obviously, the midterms are crucial, but having local state elected officials who can take a strong line, I think will be crucial going forward.
And we don't see any within the Democratic Party, the centrist Democratic Party, we don't see any resistance to that kind of thing that you're talking about. We don't see them pushing
Cory
back
Booker
at all.
put out a bill saying, I would like to see body cameras and better training. Number one, what the hell would a body camera do? They filmed everything on a phone.
Right.
I don't need a body camera. It's already on tape. And number two, there's better training. Like, I don't want a better trained Gestapo.
No.
Right? The institution is the problem,
Right.
not their
Exactly.
training or lack of
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
So I think this I saw even Pritzker saying the other day, we got to abolish Trump's ICE. Which is like, oh, come on, just abolish ICE. Not Trump's ICE, not Biden's ICE.
Right.
ICE itself is shitty. It's only been around for 23 years. It is younger than Leonardo DiCaprio's latest girlfriend. We can get rid of ICE. It is not some ancient institution, part of the Constitution. We should be able to abolish ICE on day one of any Democratic administration.
Yeah.
Let's take, I promise this gentleman, the last question.
Thank you so much. Out of the 80-ish films here at Sundance, 10 plus are Muslim Arab films. So are we winning?
Well, I think
Great question to
look,
end on.
there's more Palestinian films that have been on the Oscar shortlist
Yes.
than I would have ever expected in my lifetime. We're talking about
Voice
Palestine,
of Hind Rajab, All That's Left of It. Great
Shireen
films.
Dubis's film was
Yes.
and so we're having this conversation, and I feel like people are becoming
36.
more and more aware of what is going on and has been going on in Palestine for a long time. Are we winning? Maybe incrementally the movement is moving towards, because first people have to recognize. I mean, I go back to the humanization. First people have to, there's a wonderful film that you should all go see if you get a chance called All That's Left of Us by Shireen Dubis. And it tells
Fantastic.
It tells the story of a Palestinian family
For
3 generations. It is one of the most humanizing stories of a Palestinian family, and you see what goes on. And between Palestine 36, Shireen's film, and Hind Rajab,
Voice of Hind
you
Rajab.
see like literally the history of the Palestinian over the last 70 years. But the thing is that it is those stories that will ultimately, stories like that, I assume you're a filmmaker, but like telling those kind of stories are ultimately what is how we win. I don't think, we can go march in the streets and they'll shoot you, but the reality is that it is by making art and making stories and telling those stories that it is, I hope, how we ultimately win.
It's such a great question, and thank you, Asif, for that answer. Just sitting here, we are winning, right?
Yeah.
Just being here at the Muslim House at Sundance, we are winning. And Sue Obeidi, who from the MPAC Hollywood Bureau said in opening remarks earlier today about, look at this room, this is the future of America. And I was like, yeah, that's what's petrifying Stephen Miller, right? The future of America is diverse America, is an America where minority communities have a voice, are at the table, are being represented, are telling their own stories. And we haven't won, for sure. But, for me, as someone who spends a lot of time arguing with pro-Israel people, I can tell you this. When the makers of No Other Land went up on stage and a Palestinian and Israeli talked about ethnic cleansing on the Oscars stage, they were losing their minds. And they were losing for sure. And we were winning that night. Truth was winning that night. So I do think this year, with all these extra Palestine films, we're going to win even more. Thanks so much. We will leave it on that hopeful note. And I will say thank you all to MPAC Muslim House, to our sponsors, the Doris Duke Foundation. Thank you to all of you here at the Sundance Festival at Park City. It's great to see you all. Do subscribe to Zateo. Do subscribe to We're Not Kidding, wherever you get your podcast. So you can get it before anyone else, so you can watch it without a paywall. For now, from me, I'm Mehdi Hassan.
And I'm Asif Mambi.
And we were not kidding.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to Zateo.com. Your support matters.